was till he found himself behind a band of buffalo day before yesterday. "I am convinced," said the captain, "that running is out of the question." The method of hunting called running consists in attacking the buffalo on horseback and shooting him with bullets or arrows when at full speed. In approaching, the hunter conceals himself and crawls on the ground toward the game, or lies in wait to kill them. "Take my advice now, and don't attempt it. It's dangerous and of no use at all." "Then why did you come out with us? What do you mean to do?" "I shall approach," replied the captain. "You don't mean to approach with your pistols, do you? We have all of us left our rifles in the wagons." The captain seemed staggered at the suggestion. In his characteristic indecision at setting out, pistols, rifles, running, and approaching were mingled in an inextricable medley in his brain. He trotted on in silence between us for a while, but at length he dropped behind, and slowly walked his horse back to rejoin the party. Shaw and I kept on, when lo! as we advanced, the band of buffalo were transformed into certain clumps of tall bushes, dotting the prairie for a considerable distance. At this ludicrous termination of our chase, we followed the example of our late ally, and turned back toward the party. We were skirting the brink of a deep ravine when we saw Henry and the broad-chested pony coming toward us at a gallop. "Here's old Papin and Frederick down from Fort Laramie!" shouted Henry, long before he came up. We had for some days expected this encounter. Papin was the bourgeois of Fort Laramie. He had come down the river with the buffalo robes and the beaver, the produce of the last winter's trading. I had among our baggage a letter which I wished to commit to their hands; so, requesting Henry to detain the boats if he could until my return, I set out after the wagons. They were about 4 miles in advance. In half an hour I overtook them, got the letter, trotted back upon the trail, and looking carefully as I rode, saw a patch of broken, storm-blasted trees, and moving near them some little black specks like men and horses. Arriving at the place, I found a strange assembly. The boats, 11 in number, deep laden with the skins, hugged close to the shore, to escape being borne down by the swift current. The rowers, swarthy, ignoble Mexicans, turned their brutish faces upward to look as I reached the bank. Papin sat in the middle of one of the boats upon the canvas covering that protected the robes. He was a stout, robust fellow, with a little gray eye that had a peculiarly sly twinkle. Frederick also stretched his tall, raw-boned proportions close by the bourgeois, and mountain men completed the group, some lounging in the boats, some strolling on shore, some attired in gaily painted buffalo robes like Indian dandies, some with hair saturated with red paint and beplastered with glue to their temples, and one bedaubed with vermilion upon his forehead and each cheek. They were a mongrel race, yet the French blood seemed to predominate. In a few, indeed, might be seen the black snaky eye of the Indian half-breed, and one and all they seemed to aim at assimilating themselves to their savage associates. I shook hands with the bourgeois and delivered the letter. Then the boats swung round into the stream and floated away. They had reason for haste, for already the voyage from Fort Laramie had occupied a full month, and the river was growing daily more shallow. 50 times a day the boats had been aground, indeed. Those who navigate the Platte invariably spend half their time upon sandbars. 2 of these boats, the property of private traders, afterwards separating from the rest, got hopelessly involved in the shallows, not very far from the Pawnee villages, and were soon surrounded by a swarm of the inhabitants. They carried off everything that they considered valuable, including most of the robes, and amused themselves by tying up the men left on guard and soundly whipping them with sticks. We encamped that night upon the bank of the river. Among the emigrants there was an overgrown boy some 18 years old, with a head as round and about as large as a pumpkin, and fever and ague fits had dyed his face of a corresponding color. He wore an old white hat tied under his chin with a handkerchief. His body was short and stout, but his legs of disproportioned and appalling length. I observed him at sunset breasting the hill with gigantic strides, and standing against the sky on the summit like a colossal pair of tongs. In a moment after we heard him screaming frantically behind the ridge, and nothing doubting that he was in the clutches of Indians or grizzly bears, some of the party caught up their rifles and ran to the rescue. His outcries, however, proved but an ebullition of joyous excitement. He had chased two little wolf pups to their burrow, and he was on his knees, grubbing away like a dog at the mouth of the hole to get at them. Before morning he caused more serious disquiet in the camp. It was his turn to hold the middle guard, but no sooner was he called up than he coolly arranged a pair of saddle bags under a wagon, laid his head upon them, closed his eyes, opened his mouth, and fell asleep. The guard on our side of the camp, thinking it no part of his duty to look after the cattle of the emigrants, contented himself with watching our own horses and mules. The wolves, he said, were unusually noisy, but still no mischief was anticipated, until the sun rose and not a hoof or horn was in sight. The cattle were gone. While Tom was quietly slumbering, the wolves had driven them away. Then we reaped the fruits of R.'s precious plan of traveling in company with the emigrants. To leave them in their distress was not to be thought of, and we felt bound to wait until the cattle could be searched for, and, if possible, recovered. But the reader may be curious to know what punishment awaited the faithless Tom. By the wholesome law of the prairie, he who falls asleep on guard is condemned to walk all day leading his horse by the bridle, and we found much fault with our companions for not enforcing such a sentence on the offender. Nevertheless, had he been of our party, I have no doubt he would in like manner have escaped scot-free. But the emigrants went farther than mere forbearance. They decreed that since Tom couldn't stand guard without falling asleep, he shouldn't stand guard at all, and henceforward his slumbers were unbroken. Establishing such a premium on drowsiness could have no very beneficial effect upon the vigilance of our sentinels, for it is far from agreeable, after riding from sunrise to sunset, to feel your slumbers interrupted by the butt of a rifle nudging your side, and a sleepy voice growling in your ear that you must get up to shiver and freeze for 3 weary hours at midnight. "Buffalo! Buffalo!" It was but a grim old bull roaming the prairie by himself in misanthropic seclusion, but there might be more behind the hills. Dreading the monotony and languor of the camp, Shaw and I saddled our horses, buckled our holsters in their places, and set out with Henry Chatillon in search of the game. Henry, not intending to take part in the chase, but merely conducting us, carried his rifle with him, while we left ours behind as encumbrances. We rode for some 5 or 6 miles, and saw no living thing but wolves, snakes, and prairie dogs. "This won't do at all," said Shaw. "What won't do?" "There's no wood about here to make a litter for the wounded man. I have an idea that one of us will need something of the sort before the day is over." There was some foundation for such an apprehension, for the ground was none of the best for a race, and grew worse continually as we proceeded. Indeed, it soon became desperately bad, consisting of abrupt hills and deep hollows, cut by frequent ravines not easy to pass. At length, a mile in advance, we saw a band of bulls. Some were scattered, grazing over a green declivity, while the rest were crowded more densely together in the wide hollow below. Making a circuit to keep out of sight, we rode toward them until we ascended a hill within a furlong of them, beyond which nothing intervened that could possibly screen us from their view. We dismounted behind the ridge just out of sight, drew our saddle girths, examined our pistols, and mounting again, rode over the hill and descended at a canter toward them, bending close to our horses' necks. Instantly they took the alarm. Those on the hill descended, those below gathered into a mass, and the whole got in motion, shouldering each other along at a clumsy gallop. We followed, spurring our horses to full speed, and as the herd rushed, crowding and trampling in terror through an opening in the hills, we were close at their heels, half suffocated by the clouds of dust. But as we drew near, their alarm and speed increased. Our horses showed signs of the utmost fear, bounding violently aside as we approached, and refusing to enter among the herd. The buffalo now broke into several small bodies, scampering over the hills in different directions, and I lost sight of Shaw. Neither of us knew where the other had gone. Old Pontiac ran like a frantic elephant, up hill and down hill, his ponderous hoofs striking the prairie like sledge hammers. He showed a curious mixture of eagerness and terror, straining to